So, Laura, you have a very personal journey, and I'm not going to say anything because you're going to tell us about it separately, but that really has fueled your dedication to wanting to make employment more inclusive of neurodivergent thinking people. And you have found your place, haven't you? You have found your tribe in AUTICON and your purpose. And Franzi, I know you as Ops Director for AUTICON for the same company, but you're based in France, you're based in the UK. And you have your background has been very much social research, so you have been very involved with not just the expansion of AUTICON, but also actually measuring the global impact of what you're doing. And Philippe du Payrat, founder of mavoix.org, you've come from the startup and the tech world. You're now very much on a mission to help young people who are what's called not in education, training, or employment. So that's called a term called NEET that everybody should know before we go into this conversation. You very much believe in inclusivity. You've made it your mission to try and take the best practices of the tech world, but apply it to a non-profit framework to be able to scale the best signposting platform for young people. So I hope I've done them justice in my intros there. But it's now time to hand over to you. And Laura, if I can come to you first, can you tell us, I had no idea about AUTICON. I only met Laura last week, and I've already told about 7 people about it. So you're all going to want to go and talk about this. So can you tell the audience what it is, who it is that you help, and how it is that you do that?
Yes, AUTICON is a tech company who employs consultants who are all on the autistic spectrum. We started in Germany in 2011, and we now have 400 people around the world, including 260 autistic people. So we are the largest autistic company in the world. And our goal is to provide as many jobs as possible for autistic people, as we know that it's a population who is largely a victim of discrimination for work, but they have capacities and capabilities, and they could be very good employees if we just give them the chance to show what they can do. So.
If we come to you next, Franzi, because you have been doing this for 10 years. You have been seeing the impact of bringing different brains, different ways of thinking into the workplace. What has been the experience of AUTICON up till now?
It's been a great experience for me and probably also our employees. But we've been doing the technology consulting business for, well, 12 years almost now. And we are opening 2 newly established service strands where we now go to external clients to basically propose neuroinclusion within their business through our training provisions, through our advisory services, because we've got that very long track record of making it work, of attracting, recruiting, and retaining autistic talent. So it's been a really great journey, and we've always been quite ambitious, and we always want to show the world that it works, and now we can. Through Brilliant. Not just the tech services, but also through our neuroinclusion services. We're also newly established our AUTICON Labs, which is where we want to provide technology solutions to kind of enable the society to become more neuroinclusive.
Yeah, because when we were speaking, you were saying the neurodivergent is actually one of the biggest populations that are unemployed or that struggle to get into work, which in this day and age, when we need so much different thought and different brains in the room, we have to address. So before we go into a little bit more on that, Philippe, can you tell us a bit more about mavoix.org and what it is that you do and who you serve?
Yeah, sure. We're a French tech startup, non-profit 100%, and we catch basically the young needs, so young people not in employment, education, or training online on their social networks, using their social codes, mobile, video, new social networks, and we bring them to our one-stop shop platform where they find an action plan for their path towards employment. What we believe at Mavoix is that the path towards employment, if you are lacking a network or diploma, is hard. And you have to train yourself not only in landing a job, but in the research of landing a job. And we apply tech startup methodology that has proven successful to non-profit. And we try to convince that that is one of the potential future of non-profit. I'll try to pave the way in that sense.
So I'm interested in just some of these practicalities, if we can just deep dive, like where have you found that the lessons you brought from your tech experience have really lended itself to building and scaling your non-profit tech startup?
So I started in like working for big GAFAM, Google, doing some kind of strategy consulting, and then I wanted to challenge the status quo. And that's what startups and scale-ups do.
Yeah.
So I ended up into a mobility company called Aramisauto, where they were trying to build the next providers, a car seller online. And from there, they were proven successful because they were applying like really attention, being able to catch attention and being able to retain, and monitoring, being very data-driven. And after a while, I was thinking, okay, so I'm selling cars. Am I doing any good for the environment? So I decided to go to a short food supply chain actor that was actually leveraging the technology, and some of you may know them, La Ruche qui dit oui, which is basically like direct from producers to consumers and giving back the value, 80% of the value. And that was at the beginning of social responsibility in France. And then I decided to apply it to employment, because if you manage to change the trajectory of one person, then you have impact over food, mobility, housing, health. So that's where I learned these techniques, and I try to apply it to the employment ecosystem.
So it's always, I always like asking the personal questions. What was it, or why was the reason that you got involved? I mean, you could choose to work on any cause. What was it in your, if we come back to you first, and we'll ask you the same, ladies, but what was the trigger? What was the wake-up moment? What was the reason?
Well, to me, there were three turning points. The first one, I was studying in Peru at the time, and training, mentoring a micro-entrepreneur that has been in déplaced areas and was living in Lima. And I realized that he had to work being like 12 just for food, and had no idea on how to sell his products. I was like, wow. And he was bright, but he couldn't go to school. So we helped him like selling, marketing what he was doing, and monitoring his cost, especially his labor cost. And then I also helped some people that are in a specific, like being 12, Florian, who wanted to be a plumber. He had no idea how to land that internship, not even like work. And so we work on his CV, and we do the little like speech, and he was able to land 3 offers within a week. I was like, what? That's amazing. Like, there's just a little step missing, and no one's gonna provide it to him. And last but not the least, my wife's from Colombia. That's a place where inequality of opportunity led to violence. And when she came to France, like being a human rights lawyer, having studied 10 years, no one's going to give you the social codes on how can you succeed in a job interview. There's something to be done, and that's what we're trying to build. And
it's better than selling cars. Franzi, what about you? What was your story? How did you get involved with AUTICON?
Well, I started off as a nanny. I looked after an autistic boy over 10 years ago now. And I then decided to study, so I've got 2 degrees in sociology, and I kind of wanted to merge the 2 and kind of do something that still has something to do with autism, but also where I can kind of really put my knowledge into practice around kind of social investment and kind of social measurement, impact measurement. And I found out about AUTICON, and I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. I can still work within the autism field. I can kind of help and enable my autistic colleagues to really flourish in the workplace. And, you know, so I could merge those 2 together. And yeah, it's been a really incredible journey so far.
Amazing. And Laura, tell us a little bit more about, I love your story. So yeah, tell the audience how you got involved.
Well, I was struggling to find and to keep a job, as I had been for 20 years, because I couldn't somehow keep a job for more than 1 year. And I discovered, thanks from a video that I saw on my social media from a psychologist who is also in the spectrum, whose name is Julie Dachet. And she was talking about the specificities of autism for women, because it doesn't look the same as for men. So I was curious. I was like, oh, what are the specificities? And I found a sheet with 40 criteria, and I had 38 of them. So I was like, okay, I need maybe to look into that. And I had a burnout. I ended up on a psychiatrist. I told him about that, and he looked at my journey, my professional journey, and he was like, yeah, you definitely need to look into that. So I got my autistic diagnosis 5 years ago. And then I was like, okay, so now that I have those keys, where am I supposed to go to work? And so I looked, autistic, work, where should I go? And AUTICON popped up. So I joined AUTICON right away as a consultant.
As a consultant,
As a consultant. And for the first time in my life, I've been there for 4 years now.
Let's have a round of applause for that. That is a moment. Brilliant.
I have stability. I absolutely love my work. And I am really happy to be part of the change, because now my job is to help AUTICON to give that opportunity to as many people as possible, to make sure that as much as possible autistic people can find their place. And it's really great.
And both of your organizations do something that touches all of us. Like, we all know young people, we all know neurodivergent people in our lives, and yet sometimes it can feel so hard to know how to help. What I'd love to know from both your sides is, where do you feel businesses are now? What is pushing businesses to do better? And what do you think will become the norm in, say, 5 years' time? You know, what is good going to look like? Philippe, if we can start with you.
Well, first of all, the Z generation will be in command. Like, yes. 50% of the workforce will be there. And they demand social responsibilities. They demand environmental responsibility. And what we observe is that they want their work to be part of their life, and not all their life to revolve over their work. And that's a paradigmatic change in a way. So the businesses will have to adapt and to personalize the way they consider their employee, first of all. And that's happening. Otherwise, people just don't apply, or they don't stay. So there's a lot of work that is already going, but that will lead, in my opinion, to better workplaces. And the second part of it is, I think they want to get involved also on a volunteer basis, and they want the company to be involved in the social responsibility. And it starts to me with like helping applicants that are completely off-site to have a bouncing back solution. Because there's a paradox here. The more you are far away from getting a job, the less feedback you get.
Right.
And that's what we try to convince them to bring on board. Maybe Accor will be doing it at some point, I don't know. It's like, when you say no to every applicant, even if it's a really bad application, is a step forward to a company. You have to answer back, and not saying like, thanks, Philippe, very nice for your application, but you're out. No,
Yeah.
give me more than that.
It's a conversation. It's a
Exactly.
stepping stone along the way.
So I hope in 5 years' time that will become the norm. Too.
The norm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about at AUTICON? You've shown that it can work. You've shown that you don't need to do very much to make your workplace inclusive. What do you think businesses will be doing as the norm in the next 5 years? The good ones, at least.
I think the general kind of DEI initiatives are growing already. So I think businesses are getting it. They're getting it. They're pushing for it, especially kind of in the realm of neurodivergent, kind of neurodiversity. More broadly, people see that diversity of thought leads to more productivity, it leads to more creativity. It really does lead to more innovation. And organizations will grasp that concept eventually, I think, but it's already there. There's kind of a hint of organizations wanting to drive diversity of thought and want to become neurodiverse within their team and workforces. What I think what's still kind of lacking, what I hope will become the norm eventually, is the fact that, you know, lots of businesses fail to include the voices they're making decisions on behalf of. So if you think, you know, about reasonable adjustments, lots of autistic people may need noise-cancelling headphones, but the businesses then think every single autistic person we employ will need noise-cancelling headphones without actually interacting with the neurodivergent colleagues of theirs. So I think there's this kind of chance of choice and autonomy that you will give to your workforce that isn't there yet. Which is happening at AUTICON. You know, nothing about us without us is kind of something that comes from the broader kind of disability community that we will take to heart at every single decision that we're making. And I think even though there is the kind of growing DEI initiative, as I mentioned, we're not there yet. But, you know, AUTICON is there. So you can always kind of, you know, see us as some of the kind of main example within the workforce to drive that.
Something that really you left a mark on with me is when we spoke in our briefing last week with when you meet one autistic person, you have met one autistic person, because the spectrum is just so wide, and you could apply that with a young person as well. You know, you can't put them in a box. You know, everybody brings their own self. In terms of, I guess where I want to go to next is, you know, it's always a bit delicate with business, and we're seeing a big movement around ESG, and there is this sense that there are more people embracing D&I. But is it just going to be a tick-boxing exercise, is the worry that I have. So, Laura, are you seeing that balance between the businesses who are leading, who are really doing it because they genuinely care, or are you seeing that there's quite a lot of box ticking because they want to be seen as socially responsible, but it then doesn't go deep? What's your sense on that?
I think there's both. It's the box ticking thing is really a mistake, because if you don't really do the thing, it doesn't work. But I think the really good thing with AUTICON is that even with one consultant, they can experience the all-inclusive thing. And they realize how much neurodiversity can give to the society, to innovation. And something that I like to say is that you cannot solve a puzzle if you only have identical pieces.
Oh, that's a good one. You cannot solve the puzzle if you have identical pieces.
Yes, so you need to have all sorts of pieces, all sorts of way of thinking to get innovation and to go forward in your life. So that's really important, because, I mean, we are at ChangeNOW, so...
Yes, we need to change now.
Yes, we obviously need to go some new directions, and neurodiversity can give us that. So, and it's already there. I met someone yesterday who came on my booth and said, well, we don't have neurodivergent people at our company. And I was like, how many employees do you have? And he told me 1,000. And I thought, yeah, you have neurodivergent people in your company.
Wow, yes.
So we are here. So we just have to acknowledge that we're here. And if you don't understand how we work, maybe just ask, okay, what can I do to help you work here?
Yes.
Because sometimes it's not a lot. You know, it's just like Francis said, allow people to have their noise-cancelling headphones. And that's going to help them. And that's going to help them keep their job. Because this is the thing that people struggle with.
You talked to me about feeling that you'd spent your entire career undercover, pretending to be normal, and the release that you got from finally knowing why you thought differently. And one of the big asks that you go into is to give everybody a moment to say, if you say you're working with a colleague or a friend, and they say something and it's a bit abrupt or it's a bit different, before you jump to offense, you maybe just take a moment and think, is it because they're thinking differently to the way that I think? So if we can just, we've got to wrap up fairly soon, but I would love to understand how we as a collective in this room who are here, change makers, how can we, I'll come to you, Philippe, first, how can we help the Mavoie story and the Mavoie mission? 2 or 3 things that we can each go and do to help you scale this.
I would say, first of all, spread the word. We're just like 2.5 years old, and we already helped reach over to 30,000 people, and we're just 5 within the organization. So we have the capacity to help over 100,000, 1 million. Second, there's been a lot of interesting speech on venture philanthropy, like during these 3 days. Venture philanthropy should also become a part of a fact of life in France. I know it's happening in the Anglo-Saxon world, but I'd love to have contacts with people that in France that really want to drive this, or people that want to help Mavoie internationalize its activity, because our methodology could work on different verticals on the board. That would be the two key takeaway for us. And we're operating fast, so
you're scaling fast.
Hopefully in a year I'll have other challenges to bring.
Amazing. Well, you are absolutely we're going to be welcoming you into the London ecosystem. I will make sure that you are fully involved. What would you say are the things that this audience can help us with?
I think the main thing, not things, but actually just one main thing.
Just one thing, take notes.
Be open, just be open. Be open to take on a tech consultant if you have a tech need that is autistic. Be open to ask and maybe, find out whether any of your workforce is neurodivergent. If you're not a business, be open to speak to someone that you may think is, neurodivergent, and just be open and open the doors. There is a crisis, there is an unemployment crisis amongst neurodivergent people and autistic people. Just be open and, make sure that you enable, especially if you're from an organization, to open the doors to the talent that you may have not identified yet.
Amazing. And Laura, what do you think? If there was one thing you can't say the same as Francie, so I'm sorry, she took a good one. But yeah, what's one thing that you would add?
Educate yourself too, because neurodivergence is absolutely not what you see on TV. Autistic people are not all geniuses or nonverbal children who just, a big cliche, look at trains or metro plans.
Yes.
The spectrum is really large, and you probably know someone on it.
Yes.
So just educate yourself and
be aware.
And be aware, and make sure that you are kind to your neighbors, because you don't know. Maybe they've spent their whole life waiting for their mothership. Undercover. Waiting for their mothership to take them back to their planet. Because seriously, that was absolutely what I felt.
Right.
And it's really good once you have your diagnosis to find your species.
Yeah,
your family,
really. You find your tribe.
Absolutely.
So very quickly, quick fire round, because we only have a couple minutes left. Something that outrages you, something you're really optimistic about. Go, Philippe.
Well, I'm very optimistic about that social R&D will be funded. I'm kind of outrageous when I think that some non-profits works in silos, whereas we should all stick together. Mavoie is a collective, by the way. We are a non-profit that is supported by around 15 social organizations, and that we are working on breaking silos, because if we have the same mission, then we would focus our end beneficiary, in our case, young, underserved unemployed people.
Thank you. Francie?
I'm outraged about the lack of access to diagnosis of neurodivergent individuals. I think there is a crisis, probably in France, definitely in the UK.
Yes.
There's no access to care, to the validation of the experience of the people, rather than now, being targeted as, do you really feel like you have that condition? Do you feel like you're neurodivergent? The misdiagnosis, there's all this media frenzies around it. And I think, having said that, the emphasis should be on changing the medical sphere and, the care and the duty of care for diagnosing bodies. But at the end of the day, we see growing interest, especially at AUTICON. Coming to work every single day for the last couple of years makes me super hopeful that we can change the world if we have ambitious plans.
Laura, very quickly, last word.
Something that offends me, the cliches, because as long as we show autistic people as cliché on the media, it won't.
So we need that narrative to change.
We need now to change that.
What are you positive about?
And I'm positive about the fact that every place that AUTICON goes, every people we bring awareness to spreads the message. So it's, you know, one people by one people, but we will get there. So
amazing. Can we put our hands together? Thank you very, very much.